Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Bright Side of Beauty podcast presented by Beyond Skin Aesthetics. We are back for part 2 with Joe Griffin from Dean Garland. Last episode was so good. If you missed it, go back and listen to that because we ended it pretty abruptly. We just kept it rolling and I wanted to make sure that we got all the juice out of this conversation, all the knowledge and the nuggets. So go back and listen to part 1. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button if you are on YouTube. And if you don't mind, please leave a comment, leave us a review. We appreciate it so much. Without further ado, let's jump back into the episode with Joe. What are numbers that people need to be looking for when they're looking at, are their ads performing well and how they're converting in the office? Like what are those different analytics we should be looking at?
Yeah, and I'll actually answer that question in 2 ways. I'm going to even take a step up from that and say what so right now across the aesthetics industry, the average marketing investment is between 5 and 7% of revenue. Right? So if someone's doing $1 million in revenue, they're spending somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 in marketing. Now, a lot of times they may not be including shared staffing costs, which are attributing toward marketing, right? So a lot of people have a particular provider who's running social media on the side, right? And if you add all that up, they're probably closer to 10% is about where I think they're at across the board. And so with that in mind, I think that's a fairly healthy range. I think that depending on what your growth goals are, you would kind of play with that number, right? So like if you want to grow fast, you might go to 15% or 20%. Of course, that's going to reduce your profit, right? So you're optimizing for growth, not profit, and there's a strategy to that. But the reason why I bring that up too, it has to do with cash flow. And so when you think about what is the performance goals in advertising, a lot of it has to do with the return of cash flow and the total amount of cash flow you can expect for that advertising, and that gets to what we call treatment categories. Maybe I don't know if everyone calls it that. That's just what we call it. So when we think about wrinkle relaxers or neurotoxins, that's a treatment category to us. Body contouring, treatment category. Laser hair removal, right? Fillers, different categories. And then energy devices, like you mentioned, resurfacing. Let's say like a CO2 laser resurfacing. That is a type of category to us. The lower the margin is on the category, the greater return that we expect to see on ad dollars spent. There's an industry term called ROAS, the return on advertising spend. So something like, let's say Botox injections, right? Botox has a maybe 65% margin because the cost of that product is X, right? X dollars per unit, sold for Y dollars per unit. And then you include the provider's time, and there's about a 65% margin. So you're going to make about 65 cents on the dollar spent. That's on average for Botox. Something like a Morpheus 8, you're talking about not a ton of time on the provider side. You're talking about very high margin because their cost of goods on that's very low. Now you've got that machine cost, but the cost to deliver that service is low, and there's not like this, like the same type of product, right? So you're talking about an 85% gross profit margin on something like that. Now, something that has a lower gross profit margin like a Botox, we need to be able to acquire that customer for less than what that customer's cost is going to be pretty much on the first treatment, right? Like let's say average treatment for Botox, call it $400, $450, whatever that number is, right? Let's call it $450. That means that we're only going to make 300 because at a 65% margin, that means basically a third of the money is going to go out the door. So of the 450, we're only going to make 300. So in a treatment like that, the goal needs to be to acquire that patient for less than that profit number, obviously, right? So if we can get a patient for 150 or 200, we actually made some real profit on their first treatment. And that's kind of like table stakes. And the way I like to think about that, because advertising is a growth accelerant. It's not that core way you start a business. I wouldn't view like you can't survive without it. It's a growth accelerant. So if we think about it through the lens of let's get a profitable customer on the first patient, worst case scenario, break even, the second time that patient comes, now we're not paying for it. So we're acquiring patients. Whereas something like a Morpheus 8, which has a much higher first treatment and a much higher year one value, it has maybe a $3,000 year one value and maybe $1,000 or $1,500 treatment cost. $1,500 treatment cost, I think, is about the average for a Morpheus 8 treatment, with an 85% margin. So if it's a $1,500 or $1,000 treatment cost, you might be actually making like $800 or $1,200 on that treatment. So can we spend $400 or $500 to acquire that patient? The answer is yes, because we're actually making still pretty good profit on the first treatment, plus there's treatment 2 and 3, et cetera, right? So it's really it's a multiple of those numbers and goals based on those categories that should be set. That's part of that advertising strategy and part of what everybody needs to be tracking, so if it's working or not.
And how do you track it?
That's like one of the hardest parts, unfortunately. It's like everyone struggles with that. I mean, so at a high level, at a high level, it's funny because Go High Level, of course, is like the most popular CRM out there. So, I mean, tracking it involves it actually involves 4 things. It involves the advertising platform itself, like Google Ads or Meta Ads. It involves sometimes an intermediary layer, which might be like Google Analytics or Google Search Console or something like that. But let's say Google Analytics can be an intermediary layer. It involves a CRM, which should be an intermediary layer. Isn't always. Not everybody has a CRM, but they should. If you're going to do advertising, you should have a CRM. And then it involves your EMR, which is the final layer. And ultimately, what has to happen is we got to pass the data, which is the number of clicks, what type of ad they came from, if it was a certain keyword or if it was a certain campaign creative, right? We got to pass that information into your CRM, and that CRM has to capture it and understand it, right? And along with that information is the lead form, or is the person's contact information. So that contact information in the CRM has to understand that originally this person came from Google Ads, from the Botox campaign, right? This is a Botox lead from Google Ads. It's John. Then at least we know what those leads are and what source they're coming from, and we can tell now what the cost per lead is. That's step 1. Got to know that. What's the cost per lead by campaign type or treatment category, by channel. The next level up, which this is where it gets harder, is of the leads that came in, how many became patients? And you can do this purely in your CRM, right? And you can do this just in the CRM, and you should, by tracking the life cycle of that lead. And as you know, in these CRMs, it's like pipeline management, basically, where you're going to move that person from cold, they came in, to they've been contacted, to we've contacted them multiple times, to there's an appointment set, to they came, they showed up, now they're a patient. Generally, that's manually done. It can be automated, but that would be tracking lead to patient. If you do that properly, now you know what your patient cost was for those campaigns. And now it cost me $150 to acquire a Botox patient from Google Ads. And then, of course, the last mile is the EMR, which is recording patient value over time and being able to report that. Now, that's often very difficult to do. Over time, that's going to be less difficult to do. Right now, it's still a challenge. It just has to do with how data providers talk to each other and the information they're willing to provide. And it's not a HIPAA issue, by the way. It's just an immaturity in the market, an unsophistication where they're not talking to each other. But really what we want is, how much did that Botox lead cost? How much did we pay for that Botox patient? And what was the year 1 and lifetime value of that Botox patient? Because we all know, hey, if I can acquire a Botox patient for $150, and I know that I'm gonna actually make $2,000 from them on average over the next 2 years, how many $150 bills do you want? You can have all my $150 bills if you're gonna give me $2,000 back.
Yeah. And I think that there's so much to CRMs too. We live on CRMs in our practice. I think my brain is a CRM at this point in time because I'm looking at it so much. What have you seen as the most successful follow-up flow being from being able to see these numbers? Is it like sending a text within the first 10 minutes and then sending another one that same day and then calling? Or like what order have you seen success in practice?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is a lot of times I talk to clinic owners and they have a preconceived notion of how this should work, which I get that, right? And, if we take a step back, there's actually a statistical way that this should work, and there's pretty proven. It's pretty proven around how many times you should contact them versus not.
Yes.
Another thing that a lot of times clinic owners get caught up on is they think about their current patients. They think, well, I don't want my current patients would not want me to text them 3 times in the next 2 days, which I agree with. I don't disagree with that. These aren't your patients yet. That's a really important thing to think about. These are not your patients, and they're going to be somebody's patient. They are likely to be somebody's patient. But if you don't put the right effort in to get a hold of them, they won't be your patient. I can promise you that, right? Someone searches Botox near me, they have high intent, they're going to go get it somewhere. They fill your form out at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. You got back to them at 3 p.m. on a Friday. Oh, they already booked with a different provider, I can promise you. And it was not you. Because if you think that you're the only person that they went to, and when they didn't hear back from you like in an hour or two, they were like, what gives, man? They went back to Google. They went to the person right below you. They filled that form out. So this is how this is working. So you got to get on them. Don't think about it like, oh, I don't want to bother them. No, no, no. If you don't get on them, you're going to lose them. You're wasting dollars. So yeah, to answer your question directly, definitely want to try to get a hold of them. You need to communicate with them immediately. It could be a minute or 2 or 5 minutes, or it could be 10 minutes, but it wouldn't be 30 minutes. Now, you could communicate with them manually via text or phone call, or you could send an automated text. But if you're going to send an automated text, it needs to have a call to action in it. It can't just be like, thanks so much, we're going to get back to you. It needs to be like, hey, got your request. Would love to understand what time works for you. We're looking forward to seeing you. Do you have any questions about this procedure, or is there a certain time you wanted to come in? So you're trying to create a conversation, but you don't want to leave that general. So there's a whole like philosophy to that. But basically, I think, what does our sequence look like? I believe that I think our recommendation is 12 touches in the first 7 days
I
between
believe
phone
so.
call and or email and text messages. Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that.
Spread across. And it's not overwhelming. When you think of yourself as the consumer, when you reach out to any company, I'll use myself as an example. I reached out to a swim school for my son, and I assumed that when I filled out that form, I was going to get an automated response that was not a human being, but I was going to get an automated response giving me a booking link, more information, or hey, I received your request. If I submitted my information and I didn't get anything, I would assume, truthfully, as a consumer, I would assume that business doesn't have their systems set in place and probably doesn't have the best service when I actually get there, because we've been conditioned as consumers across the board, whether it's we're shopping online or we're in person somewhere, to have immediate attention put to it. And I think we've gotten used to AI and bringing in that human touch. And that's something that I've talked with so many people about, of what's that balance between having those automations, using AI to automate those systems, send those messages, have response, being that smart talker behind the scenes of, if they send a question back and it's, what are your hours, having AI be able to step in those cases versus having a person. And there's definitely a balance there. But what would you say is a golden rule of using AI with advertisement in today's market? So spring 2026, what is the golden rules of AI right now for ads?
Yeah, I still don't think it's good enough to fully lead a conversation and book appointments kind of, from like start to finish. Now,
I would agree.
I have seen it, we know where the technology is at. Of course, it's getting very close. There are some large enterprises which have been able to pull that off. Even using the best technology, they're spending like 6 figures in terms of engineering costs and integrations and just all the work that really needs to go in to make sure that happens properly. We haven't seen that come down yet to like the small business level at all. I think it will get there. I think it's a ways out, but I definitely love the idea of leveraging AI in general. Like, we're huge advocates for it. Now, what I don't want is to create some silly video in AI that like has a bad lip sync and is misrepresenting a brand. That's completely different. But leveraging the technology of AI to better run your business is like, you have to do that. You should be doing that. And I believe that, like, on the voice side, I think it's great for after hours, number one. It is good for those basic questions, like you said, and it's good for getting people over a certain point so that they then do connect to the actual, like, do connect to a person, right? So like if someone was to call your clinic at 11 a.m. and you didn't answer the phone and you routed that to an AI, a basic greeting, how can I help you? What questions do you have? Let me glean a few things from you. Great, hold the line. And whether it's calling your office again or texting certain people to get someone on that line, that's where it's good. It's good when you're missing things. That's kind of where it's at right now for me.
To catch it. I totally agree. And that was something, honestly, I struggled with a lot when we were throwing around the idea of getting an AI answering system in our business. And because I just kept thinking, like, we don't want to lose the person. That is who we are. We are our business. And so we don't want to disconnect that personal touch there. But I think that, again, as a society, we are so conditioned to be okay with those automated answering systems. And it's almost, I would say, a relief when you're able to get quick, easy questions without having to talk to a person where, like, you're going to have to give your whole life story to get what their hours are versus being able to call and be like, hi, what are your hours? It gives you the answer. Can I help you with anything else? No, thank you. Hang up. Done with it. It takes a lot out of it. And in that case too, I think that it also is a relief for patients to be able to get an answer when they call, even if it's not a person, and be able to leave that message and have that follow up. It's actually, I think, an elevated response versus it being like you miss their call and they get a text message, which I do love the automated text of, hey, we just saw that we missed your call. How can we help you? And it's a text message if you're not able to do. Still love that. But imagine if you're able to elevate that to actually it picked up the phone and it talked to them and said it instead of it sending a text message. So there's something for everyone. And I think that I had to get past that in my own brain of, no, it's not going to be a bother. It's actually helping to simplify and it's helping to take something off of my team's plate as well and my personal plate inside the office and just helping with streamlining everything. I'm going to take us a totally different direction here. At what point do you feel like businesses should actually back down on ads? Do you think that there's a time?
Yeah, I do think it's about provider balancing. I mean, that's for sure. And we deal with that with our customers around, they lose an injector, we're going to back down those ads. You picked up a new functional medicine person, we're going into that category or we're expanding into that category. So it definitely needs to be balanced with providers. That
Mm-hmm.
is a missing part of the conversation, by the way, between agencies and like clinics. They're not having that conversation. You got to have that conversation. Getting too many leads for something you don't need as many leads on, not getting enough leads where you have a gap. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of the answer. Um, I think that there is a world where your SEO is so good you don't even do ads. You might run awareness ads on Facebook purely for branding, but you're not even generating leads. Like you don't care about, you're not thinking about it like, oh, it's a lead gen source. You're thinking about it like purely this is for awareness, branding locally.
Mm-hmm.
You can get to a place there with SEO. And I mean, to me, that's the goal. Like we see time and time again that SEO is 5 times more cost effective, and which is also weird too, by the way, because a lot of people do spend $10,000 a month on advertising. But
Mm-hmm.
this idea that they would spend like, maybe $3,000 on SEO kind of blows their mind a little bit. They're not used to hearing that. I mean, we are definitely not the cheap SEO company out there. I'll just say that. And I'm not advocating for anything at this point, but our average SEO client probably spends 2,500 a month, which is a very different price point than what they hear. And I won't get into, unless you want to, all the reasons why, but I can tell you that if you think SEO is just about making sure your keywords are on the page, your titles are on the page, your meta description, and your body copy is good and your site's fast, that's just step one of SEO. That's
You're
like
back in the
literally
90s.
check the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, you got to do that. That's just checking the box though. That's literally, because if everybody does that, well, who's number one? If we all do that, which everybody does,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not doing that, you're really missing out. You got to do that. You got to
Mm-hmm.
check the box. So now who's number one? That's based on a popularity contest, which is all about backlinks and link popularity and link building, whole different game. That's where real SEO is going down in an area that has any level of competition. If you're in a small area, not really that important. But if you've got some competition, that's where the winners basically, are made.
Start to pull through. I
Hmm.
So what about advertising on ChatGPT? Is that a thing? So I know that we're
Oh yeah.
focusing on AEO and SEO at this point in time. This is a conversation of how does chat fit into this? How does AI
Hmm.
as a search engine fit into this conversation?
Yeah. So chat ads are real right now for products and rolling
Okay.
out for local services, and they're rolling out right now. They definitely will be live this year. They're in beta already. You may even see them in some experiences right now, but 100% ChatGPT will have ads in it. Um, Certain other platforms, in fact, Claude, which is a great and very emerging, which is owned by Anthropic. Claude is an emerging competitor to ChatGPT. They've been around almost as long, but they're starting to take market share away. We're going to hear more people talk about Claude as where they go instead of ChatGPT. I like Claude better, by the way. But they actually had a Super Bowl commercial, which was just, and it's all over social media, just shredding ChatGPT. Basically, I can't do it justice, but ultimately they're saying we're never going to run ads. That's not how we're going to make our money. We're going to make our money in different ways. We want the user experience to not be infiltrated by advertisers in that kind of chat interface.
Yeah.
So there's that. Now that these chat interfaces are referred to, like, that's typically called like GEO, generative engine optimization. That's how you improve your positioning. And right now, over 10% of all internet traffic that are landing on websites are coming from those platforms. They're actually coming from ChatGPT is the number one, right? It's
Hmm.
going to become more and more important. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a day when Claude and ChatGPT drive 50% of internet traffic. So this already is and will continue to become the new SEO.
Hmm.
How do you show up there? But then the other big one is Google. If you do a search now on Google, depending on the type of search, the AI overviews comes up where they're answering your question for you with their AI bot, right? And you're not getting below. Now, that is called AEO, answer engine optimization, which is another type of SEO. It plays by similar rules, but not the same rules. And that AEO box is taking away traffic from the organic search results, which is kind of unfortunate. Right now, you can run ads in there. So in most scenarios, anyone can run ads in Google Answers right now.
Okay. It's, I mean, I believe it because I hear patients all day, every day say, well, I asked chat this, or I asked, my whatever it is, whatever the question is. They're going there before they're going to Google at this point. They're
Hmm.
going to social
Oh yeah.
media and then they're going straight to chat or whatever service that they're using. So I believe it. We've got to stay on the forefront of it. And I think that this is also a time where you can be the leader just by staying right on track with as these things are emerging. So I would encourage everyone listening right now to start looking into what you're doing. Have these conversations with your team that's doing your web and your SEO. Find a team if you feel like you're not getting the service that maybe you think that you could be getting. Just, not necessarily telling everybody to jump ship and find somebody new, but you can see how your results are. Okay, I'm going to jump back a little bit to pipeline because I realized I took us down a little squirrel rabbit hole, which was fabulous. We got so much juice out of this conversation. When it comes to collecting your analytics in your pipeline, I didn't ask this question, or I guess mentioned this point when we were talking about that. The way that we have our CRM set up is we can tell exactly what ad and what source the lead is coming from and where they're clicking through to be able to follow the patient journey. Um, do you see that there are a lot of people out there that just have one, like, hey, this is your lead, and they don't see that in their CRM because they're not utilizing their pipelines the correct way?
Yeah, and I see a lot of people who don't have a CRM,
Yeah.
and they are running ads, and they're running ads into an email, and they're copy pasting it into a spreadsheet,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody, will kind of look at that for maybe 15 minutes, 2 or 3 times a day, and try to contact. And this is where I go back to, like, you really shouldn't be advertising. You're not ready. Um, so that's one. And two, even when they do have a CRM, I think this is one of the biggest gaps. And, you know, I don't love this reality, but our reality is we spend way too much time in these CRMs, analyzing this data, analyzing these conversions, analyzing what happens in these pipeline stages. I would love to not think about that. I just want to think about how do we make your ads better, right? How do we drive even lower cost per lead? But this is just the reality, and that's okay. But I do think, whoever's doing it, whether you're doing it internally or if you have a third party partner, that's got to be part of the conversation. And that's what we pretty much talk about when we talk. We kind of talk
Mhm.
once a month, sometimes twice a month, and this is mostly what we talk about is the performance in those things. And you guys are super, um, you're very like realistic about your own performance. Like if you go, gosh,
We're not
why the
pointing the
heck didn't we
finger straight
contact
at
that?
you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I love that. But then at the same time, I do think a lot of agencies point the finger at their client, right?
Hmm.
And they say the reason why we're not converting is because you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And I think that that's also not productive.
Hmm.
Um, One thing that we look for, and even more so now, like I would say, so 2/3 of all conversations that we have with prospects now, we disqualify the prospect. So we're not willing to take that business because this really has to be a partnership. And, we're willing to educate and we're willing to do anything we can basically to make someone successful. But it really has to be a partnership. I don't ever want to be pointing the finger at our client and saying, you're not converting, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, right? But and then of course, I don't want the finger pointed at me, but also happy to have it, right? If we're not doing something right. But I think it's
Yeah.
a partnership. Like as I think we've established on this call, it is a complicated playing field.
Hmm.
It's complex, and there's a lot of players out there, and it's very easy to work with someone who really doesn't know what they're doing because anyone can say they're good at this. And like from the buyer's perspective, from your perspective, and which I hate for you, and I'm on these calls a lot, and I talk to people, I hate this for you. It's hard for you to hear what is like you're hearing all the same stuff, kind of.
Hmm.
Like, how do you distinguish? How do you differentiate between what I'm someone like me saying versus some other guy who's saying the same? Sounds like the same thing, but I think at the core of it, it is that partnership. There's got to be this relationship where everyone's kind of working together to get to the finish line, which comes down to what is that patient acquisition cost and what is that return on cash flow over time. I mean, that's ultimately what this is all about.
It really is. I mean, it's a relationship from the partner that you have that is working with you on the success, obviously, but then also the relationship that you have with your potential patient. It's everything. It's a relational game that we are playing here. So thinking of it as such, and that is gold. You have to be so careful about who you are partnering with. And, it's just like dating or marriage. Like you've really got to filter through, are they telling you everything you want to hear and their actions aren't following through? And I think that that's something that we have seen of we've worked with so many ad accounts that say we're the best, we understand this, we do this, but then maybe their information's not coming through the same way, and then it does become that like finger pointing situation, and then that's not good for anyone. That's just not an environment that you want to be in. And um, I I am a firm believer that you get to choose your environment that you're in and you have full control over who you're partnering with. And so being careful about who you partner with is super important. On the note of partnerships, how important is it to have either one agency that is doing your SEO, your ads, all of that together? Um, how important is that versus having maybe two agencies? Like in our case, we're working with Dean Garland and Aesthetic Conversion, but you work very well together. How important is that relationship between all these moving parts?
I think relationship is the key word. And, of course, I think a lot of agencies where they offer multiple services, they want to consolidate that to themselves. We're guilty of that too. We believe that with with the right consolidation, we can deliver a better service. Now, in the case of aesthetic conversion, they actually do a lot of things we don't do. That's why partly why we have such a good relationship. Like
Mm-hmm.
the things we don't do well, they do well. And so I think we have a unique marriage between our two companies,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. I love Jared, and his whole company is awesome. But I think it's that relationship. I think it's hard to find that perfect match. If
Yeah.
I'm you, if I'm you, I don't love the idea of one company being in charge of my like customer acquisition, my digital customer acquisition strategy, and like, am I going to get 5 customers this week or 20 customers this week? Well, I guess it depends on if Joe at Dean Garland is working hard today or not. Like,
Yeah.
we need, so you having some redundancy, I think, is good for people. I mean, and there's a world where you can consolidate it and probably get really good results, but there's a risk to that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's smart to have 2 partners at some level that you're working with, get a little bit of redundancy there. And I think people should be a little bit careful about not having some ownership in the process in terms of like, as an example, and this is really, in my opinion, kind of slimy behavior. A lot of agencies will like open up a Google Ads account, but it's not your Google Ads account. It's like their Google Ads account. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, they're running your ads and they're doing a great job. Like, that's great. And you're like, hey, we lost a couple providers. We need to pause. I want to go ahead and, when we'll probably take it back over internally, we might kind of do some small ads internally. We'll come back to you. And they're like, no, you can't do that, right? We own your Google Ads account. People do that with websites. They do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful for that too. But I think, yeah, probably having a little bit of diversity is good. Not too much, maybe 2, maybe 3, but probably like 2 people you work with, because you don't want to be like too spread out. And then
Right.
then there's like a lack of accountability, way too much finger pointing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a world where one group can own it all, but you probably got to establish. I wouldn't recommend jumping in all the way. Probably start somewhere and build that relationship over time.
What would you say your biggest piece of advice, or you can even make this like multi-part, but what's your biggest advice for somebody that wants to start ads or wants to clean up their advertisement?
Before you hire an agency or before you bring in that third party, make them do an audit. So have them go in, look at your existing Meta or Google Ads account, and define where you're at right now, what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, and what the game plan would be if you hire them. It's a lot of work. A lot of agencies maybe are not willing to do that. If I was a buyer, I would be willing to pay for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be willing to pay multiple agencies for that, right? I would say, hey, I get it. You don't want to go spend literally 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours, right? Auditing the account, putting together a report, putting together like a more specific roadmap. Cause I mean, that's a lot of work for
Mm-hmm.
anybody to do, especially when you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get your business or not. Well, then I would say, fine. How much would you charge me to do it? 500 bucks? 500 bucks is
Yeah.
cheap to get the right partner.
Yeah.
And spending 500 bucks in 2 or 3 different places, even to see the quality of their work, the way they think about things, the quality of their audits and recommendations, is going to tell you a lot, right, about that working relationship after. So if you can get them to do it, I think that could save you, because picking the wrong partner and being stuck with them for 3 to 6 months costs a lot of money.
Costs a lot. A lot of
Costs
headache.
tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands
Yes.
for time
Yeah.
lost, all the things. Yeah.
Reputation in your community, in your industry. I mean, you can lose your Facebook account, you can lose your Meta account, your power to even run ads. There's a lot at stake that, yeah, it's so important to just do the work before you choose who your partner is going to be. And I think that that's a life lesson overall. That's like a relational lesson of be
Yeah.
careful of, who you go into business with, who you go into relation with. Surround yourself with really good people, and it will multiply in itself. When you're around good people that want you to succeed, you're going to succeed, and you're going to take that on too. I think that it's also a heart placement. You just got to find the good people that are following through, that deliver on it and have integrity too. Look for integrity in the accounts for sure. This has been so juicy is the only word I can even think of for this episode. Like, there's been so much value that has come out of our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining. Before we go, I love to ask all of my guests the same question, because we are on the Bright Side of Beauty podcast. What is something that is beautiful to you?
So I was on probably Facebook. It was like 2 days ago. I usually don't comment on these like random posts of people I'm not friends with, but you get them in your feed. And someone said something along the lines of, it's basically like, it's something along the lines of like, I wish I'd spent more time in my youth appreciating the things around me. And I actually responded to that. I got like a bunch of people who replied to it, and I was like, and I admitted it. I said, you know, I work too hard. I spend too much time building, truthfully, a level of wealth, which I believe is in the best interest for my family to create stability and, a level of security, which is, I feel like, my job to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and I'll be 45 here in a couple months, right? So I'm middle aged, hardcore middle aged, right? Getting older. I'm starting to think about, it won't be long, I'll be saying I'm 50, which is just very sad, makes me sad. But as you
50 is the new 40.
as you get, that's right. As you get a little older, I mean, very quickly I start to look back and think, no one cares. My family maybe not doesn't even care. Like, I think they just rather spend time with me, right? And like, they don't need a new e-bike, and my wife doesn't need a better Louis. I think that,
Yes, she
like,
does,
that's not
Joe.
what's
She always
she does,
does.
and I'm trying to provide it, right? But I think we're gonna look back and we're gonna go, man, I really could have done with a $500 bag, not a $5,000 bag.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm guilty of it.
Mhm.
I'm here to create a big company. I've
Yeah.
done it multiple times. I'm trying to do it again, and I'm trying to do it partly because I like working with people. I love building teams. I love seeing people prosper. I like being a part of people's, like, life and career growth. That's a big part of it, and I want to do good for the world overall. But it's also for me and my family, right? But what is beautiful? I mean, I guess the takeaway is, like, I don't know if any of it matters.
Presence.
I think what matters is just it's your presence. It's just being with the people you love. You don't have to, take over the world. And I won't listen to my own advice because I believe in taking over the world. But I also believe in the beauty of not doing that and really being there for the people that you love and that love you back.
Yeah, that's the heart of a serial entrepreneur, is what you were just explaining of you can't let it go. But honestly, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with chasing your dreams as long as you're making sure that you're focused on the people that you're doing it with. If you're doing it by yourself, there's no point. It really is
True.
the back to relations. It's about your people. It's about your family. It's about, when you think of your legacy, it's not the dollars in a bank account or the size of the house that you can leave behind when you go. It's the morals, the life, the experiences that you have with people. And I have this conversation with my parents all the time. And I've always had this, not even like I hate to even say it, but like a YOLO type mentality. But it's kind of this, like, we have one life. Like, before my son becomes an adult, I have 18 full summers to be able to say that I have him at home. I'm going to have a life of summers, but I have 18 childhood summers with him. So I'm going to use every single one of those to make sure that I'm present. 18 Christmases. Like, when you think of it, you have more, but I just like to think of it as, like, why would you waste even one of those if you know time is limited and you don't even know if you're going to have all 18 or, the next 40.
True.
So you've got to take every single day to appreciate the blessings that you have around you, your hard work and the things that you have around you, and then pouring it out to others too. And that is something that I definitely can see in working with your team and the environment that you have in your company too, of it's people that care about people. And you can't replace that. You can't
No,
replace
and it's
that
the same
heart
with you.
behind it. Yeah.
Right.
Your presence
Yeah.
and doing good in the world is more than any dollar can do. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that that's the
Yeah.
first time somebody has said that as their answer. Jared's might have been kind of close to that because Jared Rohrer has a very similar heart placement, and he's got your mindset too of serial entrepreneur. He's a go-getter. He's always got his dreams and he's chasing them, but he's a family man at the heart, and that is, I think family is beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Well, okay, one last thing before we go. How can people find you? If you've got socials, drop your socials. Can they email you, your website, any information you want to give?
We got to get our social game up. Probably best is deangarland.com. My email is joe deangarland.com. Feel free to email me. Always online, literally. So yeah, that's probably best.
Perfect. I'll drop it in the show notes as well. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us so many nuggets of knowledge.
Thank you, Delaney. Always a pleasure.